All right. Good morning and good afternoon to our East Coast people. How are you today, Danny?
Good morning, Brandy. Thank you. I'm very good. Yourself?
Good. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today. Really, we were supposed to kind of get together before Virtual Academy, but schedules got away from us. Virtual Academy happened, so here we are. How was your experience with Virtual Academy?
It was great. We had a lot of feedback, a lot of sign-ups, and a lot of clients getting more protected.
Great, perfect. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm looking forward to asking you about what you do and the challenges that our MSPs face. And before we get into that, why don't you tell me a little bit about how you came about with ThreatLocker and what your muse was to start that?
So I've been in the security industry for about forever, before it was called cybersecurity anyway. And I've been in the enterprise space where we've dealt with big corporation security and how they handle that. I've worked in the MSP space. I've also ran multiple email and security companies. And about 5 years ago, I sold my last business, and I was consulting on a number of cases, and quite a few cases that came up were ransomware cases. One of which was a large insurance company in Australia that had been hit by ransomware, and they'd been destroyed across the board. And as I was going into these companies, and some of them were big companies and some of them were small companies, and I was always trying to encourage people to stop looking for threat detection and start looking at a more of a zero trust approach. And I know zero trust is today's buzzword, but ultimately it means deny first and ask questions later approach.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept getting pushback that it's too hard. There's updates cause me a problem, deployment caused me a problem. And so the idea behind ThreatLocker was to take that zero trust approach, which is used quite heavily in the Department of Defense and big government agencies and big banks, and bring it to the rest of the world, bring it to the MSP market, bring it to the mid-enterprise market, or even I won't say small business, because small business really should be going through MSP in one way or another anyway. Mm-hmm. But those companies that had 500 seats, 2,000 seats or before, that couldn't really justify these enterprise tools, to make it available to them.
So one of the things that I have found that most MSPs have a challenge in having full visibility and control of their client's environment. ThreatLocker helps with that.
And that's the point. It's about lack of control. At the moment, too many businesses, too many MSPs are essentially spraying and hoping that they catch all the threats. They're putting in antivirus and threat hunting and endpoint detection remediation, and they're all great that they're doing that, and they're hoping that ultimately something detects the threat. And essentially what they're doing is they're putting in 3 house alarms, one with glass breaking sensors, one with motion sensors, and one with contact sensors, and they're hoping that between one of them detects a threat and makes enough noise before someone actually breaks and steals something.
Right.
The problem is with using that as a sole approach is threats get missed, and it's inevitable. We go back over the last 10 years and we see new viruses that didn't get picked up by the antivirus, that didn't get picked up by the EDR. And it's very difficult to keep finding threats. I was at an event a few weeks ago, I say 2 months ago now, when we were allowed to travel in Chicago. And I asked in the room, there was about 120 managed service providers, how many of them haven't had clients with ransomware in the last 2 years? Only 2 people put their hand up. And all of them were running EDR and antivirus, and they're all doing the best they can. So what we're trying to do is say, that's fine to run these techniques and these tools, but you have to add policy. You have to add control. And if you don't have control of your environment, you're just hoping. So what ThreatLocker wanted to do was bring in the control element that's typically used in the enterprise, mm-hmm. and make it multi-tenant, make it easy, make it fast, and make it quick and efficient for managed service providers to use.
So bringing up antivirus, we all know that the signature-based threat detection, like antivirus, protects against the known threats. What would be the unknown threats that ThreatLocker would protect against?
And if we think about antivirus, it works in a few different ways. One is a signature-based, and then we can tag on AI if you want to use that word, which is thrown around, or threat analysis or behavior analysis. But ultimately, these are all based on known patterns. And the reality is, if you take something like Dropbox Dropbox takes your files and uploads them to the internet. Well, if you write a piece of malware to do the same thing, the behavior is no different to Dropbox. So what the threat detection side of the scale is trying to do is look for things based on behavior. The problem is the behavior, the area is too gray. So what we're saying is we don't care about the behavior. Well, there's two things we're saying. One is if it doesn't need to run in your environment, whether it is TeamViewer, whether it's PowerShell, or whether it's PuTTY or GoToMeeting, don't let it run. If it can't run, it can't be weaponized and used against you. That way, you're not worried about if a user opens a Word document. I mean, I saw an example yesterday. I got an email that had a zip file, it had a Word document, it went out to the internet, it downloaded, it got through the antivirus, and then it tried to run a piece of code in the background. Now, the user, as far as they're concerned, they're opening a Word document. They didn't know that it was dangerous or not dangerous. So they thought, and yes, they enabled macros, which was a bit, for me, that seems a really stupid thing to do. But for a user who doesn't understand security, they're just clicking. They always see security alerts. They never know which ones to click on and which not to. So They enable the macros and they got that malware and the antivirus missed it. When you're saying no program, no code can run without approval from the security solution, without approval from someone who's educated to make that decision, an MSP, an IT security guy, then you're saying essentially it doesn't matter if the antivirus detects it or not. It doesn't matter if it's a 0-day threat or it's someone using legitimate tools, like legitimate encryption tools to CryptoLocker your files, because you don't have to have malware. You can use any legitimate encryption tool to ransomware someone. It doesn't matter, because now what we're saying is we don't use this in our environment. If it's an unknown virus, a 0-day virus, we're going to block it. If it's an encryption tool we don't want, we're going to block it. If somebody sent our client a link to a TeamViewer saying, oh, our screen connects down, we need to get on your system using TeamViewer from a spoofed email address, and they click on it, it doesn't matter that TeamViewer is good or bad, because it's not allowed in that environment.
Wow, that's definitely some real great protection there. One of the other questions I wanted to touch on, and Monty Young actually commented, and he reminds me of this question. He actually says, one of the best additions to our stack, very much worth your time, not only for your application whitelisting, but the auditing is top notch. Now, that brings me to one of the challenges that MSPs face, which is whitelisting applications. Tell me how ThreatLocker helps the MSP manage that.
And that's it. I come from the enterprise background, and if you'd asked me 5 or 6 years ago, what do you think about people who don't whitelist? I'd say they're stupid. And they'd say, but it's too hard. And I'd say, well, take your medicine and stop complaining. So, and that was kind of my philosophy as an enterprise security guy. It's not a choice. Get over it. I don't care if you don't like putting gas in your car. You got to put gas in your car. I don't care if you don't like taking your medicine. Take your medicine. It's got to be done. It's part of the cost of business, but obviously it's an expensive part of business when it's complicated. So what ThreatLocker did is we really looked at the problems of whitelisting, and whitelisting is just part of it. We don't want it to run, and we said, well, what are the objections? Why is it so hard for people? And the first objection was, well, it's just too hard to even figure out what we're running in to begin with. The average computer has 20 to 60,000 files on it, and just our clients are all different. Everyone's running different software. I can get in you and say, well, draw a line in the sand, but I don't know how to draw a line in the sand because we don't know what we've got to draw a line in the sand. So the first thing ThreatLocker did is make that process of building policies out really easy. So when you deploy ThreatLocker, and that rule base continues to get updated, we literally scan your machine, catalog those 20,000, 60,000 files, upload the list of files to our data centers. We'll compare hashes to known applications. We'll build out policies for those known applications. And it makes it automatically for you. So you essentially just push out the agent. We even integrate with your RMMs, your PSAs, so you can automatically pull your customers in, push out. You don't have to worry about creating customers manually. If you're using Automate or Datto or Kaseya, you can just do that straight out the box, or any of the RMMs really.
Oh, right.
And you push that agent out and wait, let it learn for a few days, let it come back and give you a list of saying, here's what we found in your environment. Then you can say, okay, I'm happy with what you found, or I'm unhappy with X, Y, and Z. I'm going to check that off a list. Now I'm going to lock this down. You uncheck a box, and now it's locked down. The other big objection was, well, what happens when there's an application update? Microsoft released about 25,000 unique files as part of Windows updates every single month. And if you're going down that whitelisting route, you need to make sure that those new files are allowed. And Microsoft signed about 30% of those. So there's no way of doing it by cert. So what ThreatLocker did is said, okay, we get this is a huge job. We get those 25,000 files, and it was 80. I don't know if it was 82 or 87,000 this month. I can't remember. On Patch Tuesday, it was ridiculously the highest number we've ever seen. Files being released in a single day. What happens when there's an update to Office or to Chrome or to Zoom or to Automate or to N-Central or to whatever system you're using? It's a big problem because now we have to make sure that that update is allowed. And so what we did in ThreatLocker was we made the cataloging easy, but then we also said, well, we're going to match it with known apps. And when those apps update, we have a team behind the scenes, 24 hours a day, huge team that literally downloads every update that's released from Microsoft, every update that's released from TeamViewer, and 200 to 300 other applications. And we're not here to endorse those applications, but if you have a policy to allow TeamViewer, it's still going to be allowed tomorrow. If you have a policy to allow Office when the update's in an hour's time, because I don't think they go an hour between updates at this point, Microsoft, you're going to be able to run that update and you don't have to worry about it. And they were the biggest crunches that stopped MSPs going down that zero trust model. And then there's the approval process of how easy is it when someone needs something, and that's 30 seconds. Click, approve, request, PSA integration. Very, very easy to do that. But it just takes work away. So as an MSP, if you're spending more than 2 hours a month per 1,000 endpoints, you're doing something wrong. Versus if you go back to the old school whitelisting approach, you're spending 8 hours a day, and I'm saying 2 hours a month per 1,000 endpoints, 8 hours a day for 5 to 6 staff per 1,000 people. And that's where we were in the enterprise. And we thought that was fine. So, but it really takes away all that overhead. So you're just having to say, if there's something new, I permit it. If there's a new Chrome extension that we haven't previously approved, we permit it. Outside of that, if it's not on the list, it doesn't run.
And on top of that, it makes the MSP look like a rock star, you know?
Well, that's it. We had a client recently who was able to win their biggest customer. It was, I think they said it was 400 endpoints, purely on the basis that they were able to show their customer, we're not just spraying and praying that everything works out fine. We're actually giving you proper enterprise tools. We're giving you proper enterprise management, and we're doing a job for you. And the customer says, "Oh, what's this file that's trying to run? The MSP's taking care of that for me."
That brings up another question for me. But before I get there, you brought up Zoom, and I want to talk about Zoom and Angry Birds and applications like that, and how those can be weaponized against the client. And then well, first of all, tell me how they can be weaponized, and then how you detect that if there's a threat.
So every time you run something on your computer, and it doesn't matter if you're an administrator or not, it really doesn't matter. If you run something, if you run Zoom, if you run Angry Birds, if you run Office or PowerShell, that application has access to everything that you do. So that leaves two problems. One is if the application is bad, if it's intentionally bad, if the vendor decides they're going to misplace the trust you've put in them and decide to do something wrong, or they get compromised and someone accidentally ships out bad code, then that application can encrypt your files. It can steal your files. If you're running Angry Birds and Angry Birds get angry one day, they can start uploading your data to the internet or encrypting your files. So that's the big issue. And we mostly trust vendors don't intentionally do bad things. It's not, most vendors aren't intentionally going to do something bad. The other problem is when they get compromised, and Zoom is a perfect example. And Zoom's just today's example. There's one every single month.
Right, I've been hearing a lot of compromises happening with Zoom and businesses lately.
Yeah. So if you look at the issues with Zoom over the last few weeks, there was three main issues. One is somebody could send you a link on Zoom directly to a piece of malware, and you could click on that link, and they could even make it look like an image or something. If you're paying a lot of attention, you might notice. And when you click on that, it immediately ran that malware on your system with no interaction from the user. Now, a whitelisting solution would stop that. So that was the first issue. The second issue was they could send you a fileless payload. So they could send you essentially pipe in PowerShell commands or regserve commands and essentially use Zoom to springboard and weaponize PowerShell against you. So you click on this link and suddenly PowerShell's running and your data is being uploaded to the internet. And then the third issue was they could steal your credentials by getting you to send your credentials to a fake network share and get your local computer credentials. The third I almost think is the least scary, but we deal with that too. But because you're talking about a local laptop that shouldn't have its credentials exposed to the internet anyway, or maybe a domain. But certainly 1 and 2, we're talking about if you can get someone to run a PowerShell command or run a piece of malware, you've got complete access to their system. So go ahead, Sam. So what we want to do is we want to say, well, great, okay, Zoom can run in my environment, but that doesn't mean Zoom should be able to open PowerShell. It doesn't mean it should be able to open RegServe or run DLL or Task Scheduler. The same applies to Office and Google Chrome. Last November, Microsoft released a fix for Internet Explorer that stopped attackers running PowerShell commands directly from websites without any interaction from the user. By using the application ring fencing, you're essentially saying, well, Internet Explorer needs to run, but it doesn't need to call PowerShell, or maybe it shouldn't run, but that's another conversation.
Right.
So that's kind of where we go with that. Is everything you run, every program you run can be weaponized, and it can either do things bad directly, or it can call other applications to do things bad. So
what happens when somebody clicks on something that is blocked or being protected by ThreatLocker? What is the message that pops up for them that notifies them of that? Just a visual that I'm trying to get.
Yeah, so essentially, and it depends on how it's configured. In most cases, if it's something like ring fencing, we're going to silence out because you don't want to see some of the white noise that comes with it. If Internet Explorer is trying to call PowerShell, you know that's bad. You don't want to pop up and get requests and create tickets. But in most cases, the user downloads an application, they download a web extension that isn't permitted. It pops up and says, and it's normally branded by the MSP, ThreatLocker has blocked this, or the MSP's blocked this. Do you want to request permission? They just hit the request button. And the MSP can approve that like in 30 seconds from a text message, from an email, from a PSA, whatever they'd like.
Right, okay. So going back to your client that's actually basically won the client using your product, what kind of demo did they use to show them that? And I assume that you can actually help MSPs sell their client using your product.
Yes. So and there's two different types of MSP clients. There's MSP clients who are, let's say, co-managed, where they have an internal IT, and those demos tend to be more technically driven about this is the power, this is how you can use this tool. And then there's the MSP client who essentially is a business owner who just wants stuff to work. Normally, if it's an internal IT, they would receive and we can help the MSPs deliver demos to their clients as well, or the MSPs we can train them to do it. They can deliver a demo just like we would if you sign up for a demo at ThreatLocker, go through the product, there is a lot of features in this product. And well, I mean, everything down from saying PowerShell can't access files on my network, but it can do everything else, through to this backup drive can only be accessed by Veeam backup. So if something gets compromised, nothing can access it, through to blocking USB drives, enforcing encryption, through to there's a lot of policy power. So there's a lot of detail in the demo that most people don't even think about, through to auditing. I mean, I see one team mentioned the auditing features. You can see every single time someone's accessing a file, if they're copying it to a USB drive, if they're uploading it to the web, if they're deleting it, did they move it? All of that is logged in the audit.
Wow.
So, and that's really nice, because when you're showing that to a customer, you're saying, you know, that file that you're concerned that someone's stealing your data. Well, we can show you who's accessed what files, what they did with them. Did they delete them? Did they copy them to USB drives? And if you want to block it, you can do that. So when you're doing the enterprise, but we'll call it enterprise, small enterprise, if you like, where you've got internal IT, the demo is obviously a lot more aggressive. If the MSP is demoing to a customer who says, it's a relatively simple message, which is, right now we're spraying and praying. We're doing background checks on everything that comes in, but guess what? Sometimes when you do a background check, it doesn't unturn everything. You can go and rob the house next door and you still got a clean criminal record. It makes no difference. So we're just saying no entry unless you're entitled. And that's a relatively clear message that most business owners can understand. And then when something is running, if PowerShell is running, it can't access files it shouldn't be able to access. If Internet Explorer is running, it can't call PowerShell. And you can relatively simplify that. We help the MSPs refine these pictures. We have a box account where we have template emails, we have videos, we have white papers and things like that from a small business perspective, as well as from an MSP perspective. that they can share. They can say, oh, I've got a school, and the school, let's see how another school has used this.
Mm-hmm. Now, so that's really a great approach, because one of the objections that MSPs face is that their client already has an IT guy, so to speak. So being able to present that in a way that where they can help the internal IT guy help the client, that's a totally different approach. And for you to be able to provide a demo for that definitely is a positive for the MSP and being able to close some sort of deal with that client. Now, they would be able to call up and say, not you specifically, but one of the reps, and say, hey, Danny, I have a client, a potential prospect. I'm going to be doing a presentation. Here's the specifics. Can you help me present or put together a demo to help close this client? Is that something you're able to do?
Absolutely. So every MSP, every partner of ThreatLocker has a few things at their disposal, which are very easy. One is we have 24-hour support. Our average response time is 48 seconds, and we have the stats published directly with live chat. And now this almost looks fake, but I guarantee it's not. There's only one bad rating that I know in there, and that was me, because I lost focus and forgot I was talking to them. But our 100%, it shows as 100, but I guess it's 99 point something, 100% satisfaction on the support. On the rating. And that is there 24 hours a day. So if you have a problem as an MSP, you're not going to get the traditional, go and ask someone on Facebook, you'll get a better answer, or go and ask somebody in the chat on Reddit. The best way you can get support is click on that link and say, can you help me? Not only can they help you, but if you're stuck, if they can't help you on chat, they will jump on a Zoom session with you and go over it with you there and then. Which is really important, because it means if you're stuck at a customer and you just don't know how, and this is obviously when you start using the product, you have more questions, so you want that. Mm-hmm. You ask the question and we can answer very, very quickly for you. The other thing you have is the ability, every MSP is associated with an engineer. There's then a failover to other engineers if they're not available. You can book a call, you can book a web demo, you'll be given a link for your engineer, and you can say, here's a link. You pick a time on a calendar and you can choose, what do I want help with? Do I want a demo? Do I want help with an audit review to go over a customer's audit? Do I want help with a deployment? And you just pick that, and you can book it on the calendar whenever suits you, so you're available. And that's more of a planned, I'm going to this client and I want to do a demo. Can you join us for this call? And then they also have access to our marketing resources. So Liz in marketing, which I think you've spoken to, she's great. She works with all the MSPs. Mm-hmm. She'll ask them what types of customers they have. She'll try and get case studies with them, and she'll help them create custom emails in addition to the templates. And she's filling up a big folder that she shares on Box, where MSPs can help themselves to white papers and things.
Fantastic. Now, how long is the process from starting with you to fully implemented and running?
So I'll give you a couple of examples. I would like it to be faster, not because it can't be, but because MSPs tend to get distracted very easily sometimes because they get very busy. Mm-hmm. So one example, we did a deployment through Kaseya, probably about 6 months now. They got really excited. They saw a demo. Everyone gets excited when they see a demo. So if you haven't done a demo, just go on to ThreatLocker.com and book a demo. It's worth it with an engineer. And they'll do a demo. At the end of the demo, they actually imported the script into their RMM. They pushed out the agent to just over 2,000 endpoints. They let it learn for a week. A week later, they had a call. They came back. We went over any apps that were maybe causing problems. It took about an hour, and then they were locked down on 2,000 seats. That's a great use case and a great example. A lot of MSPs take a more slower approach. They'll deploy, and then they'll a handful, and then they'll lock down a handful, and then they'll deploy a handful. We typically recommend you wait for about a week. If you've got a client who is in the middle of a ransomware attack, you kind of forego the I don't want any noise and say, okay, let's just deploy it, get it locked down as fast as we can. And we've had that as well, where clients have literally just deployed the agent, turned on the blocking, and said, I'm going to deal with the fallout of any false positives or afterwards, because I want to skip that learning process. But it can be as little as an hour or two, and you may implement some policies in an hour and then let others later on. And it can be, I've seen people wait a month. I've seen people wait too long in that learning process, and you don't want to be at the other end of that either.
And what were the consequences of that use case when they just deployed it and then said, okay, I'll deal with everything else afterwards?
Not as bad as you'd think. I mean, essentially, they said we have we have a couple of MSPs that do that, don't actually learn. Say we're going to start with a clean piece of paper and we're going to go through and do an approval by approval basis. And that was they continue to sign up customers like that every time they onboard a new client. That's how they approach it. They figure we don't want to learn, we don't know what's there. We're gonna say no to begin with. The people who lock it down pretty quickly, it's really not that bad. I mean, we've done cases where we've had MSPs where we've actually put an engineer on it checking it. So if an MSP, one of our partners, calls us up and said, we've got a client, they get hit by ransomware, can we get this on there now? And we've locked it down and we've just gone through and actually we have because of this COVID situation, we have we call them cyber heroes, our support guys, actually offering the ability to handle the approval requests for the first 30 days for people. So they've locked down and our guys have handled it and they've been able to, it's not like our help desk is overrun.
Okay, now with the pricing structure, we don't need to go into the details of that, but is that on a per user or is it a per month or is there a contract involved?
Yeah, so the pricing is typically per endpoint or per user per month. You can choose the model that suits you. Most MSPs do endpoints because that's how they bill their clients. But if you bill your clients per user, you can mirror that billing method with your clients. It's in the kind of, it's not as expensive as the high-end antiviruses and probably a little bit more expensive than the cheaper ones in terms of ballpark pricing. Everything it's monthly billing. So if you add seats in the month, you just get billed as per those seats as you add them, and typically you negotiate a price up front to begin with based on the number of seats you're going to deploy. So if you say I'm going to deploy 2,000 seats, you kind of fall into that bracket, and we'll do a ramp period. One of the nice things we're doing as well for the next 60 days, well, I guess we're 60 days nearly up, so until the end of June, is if you sign up, we can do. If you say I'm going to deploy 6,000 seats or something, we can do a ramp where we say deploy those seats now, and we're not going to bill you until X number next month and X number the month after, to allow you to go and get the money from your clients and just get them protected sooner rather than later. Okay, that's definitely a great special you have running. So we'll definitely notate that into when we're all done with this video. We'll notate what that is, what your current special is, and then of course how to get a hold of you. Is there a specific email they should email when they want to have a demo, or is it just going to your website and scheduling one? So one is you can book it from the website. On the very front page, it says book a web demonstration. You can just fill in the calendar link there. It will pick the engineer that's most available at the time you're looking for. That's the easiest way. You can email sales@threatlocker.com as well, and somebody will come back to you there. Of course, if you book the demo, you guarantee you're on the calendar rather than trying to figure out time over email. You can also fill in any of our partner forms on our website to become a partner. Okay. Perfect. Well, guys, we're going to go ahead and end this call soon. Please feel free to continue to ask questions. Danny and I are going to be monitoring the thread. So if you have any questions post-video, please continue to ask away. We're going to be there. We're going to continue to be on here. And Danny, thank you so much for being here and sharing your time with me. I really appreciate it. I know how busy you are. So I'm really grateful for that. Okay. Thank you for having me, Brandon. Thank you. Thank you. It's okay. It happens all the time. So guys, thank you again. We're going to go ahead and post here how to get a hold of Danny, how to get a hold of ThreatLocker, scheduling a demo. And don't be shy. Ask some questions, and we'll be on there to answer them for you. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you soon, Danny. Thank you. See you soon.